prepare to be spooked. We bring you the most unbelievable babysitting stories that'll leave you wide-eyed and wanting more. If you're into heart-pounding tales of mystery and suspense, this is the place to be. Don't miss any of our thrilling episodes. Subscribe now and hit that like button to join the fun. Remember, once you sign up, there's no turning back. Welcome to our world of eerie babysitting adventures. So, let me tell you about this one time I did a babysitting job I'll never forget. I'm Sarah, and I have been looking for work. So when the Smiths asked me to babysit their kids at their house, I just couldn't say no. Little did I know that it'd be the creepiest experience of my life. Their house was big and old, with a musty attic that was filled with dolls. They had all kinds of dolls up there, but there was this one that stood out from the rest, and it just gave me the heebie-jeebies right away. Anyway, the first few nights at the house went off pretty smooth. The kids, Mia and Jack, were great. We played games, watched movies, and I put them to bed like any other babysitting gig. But as nights went by, things started to get, well, weird. One night, I heard some strange noises coming from the attic. It was like something moving around, and it scared me a bit. I thought about going up there, but decided against it, telling myself it was probably just the wind or an old house settling. But this one weird thing started happening. Every morning, I'd find the door of the attic slightly ajar. I mentioned it to Mr. and Mrs. Smith, and they just laughed it off, telling me it was probably the house shifting or something. As days went by, I had this growing feeling that the attic and that doll especially were watching me. But I tried to ignore it. I didn't want the kids to see me freaking out over some dolls. One night, I put Maya and Jack to bed, and as I tucked them in, I could have sworn I heard a faint giggling coming from the attic. It sent a shiver down my spine, but I didn't want to scare the kids, so I just said goodnight and closed their bedroom door. Later that night, when I was alone in the living room, I heard the unmistakable sound of footsteps from the attic. I was scared, but I knew I had to investigate. Armed with a flashlight, I nervously climbed the stairs to the attic. As I opened the door, the beam of light from my flashlight revealed that one doll, the one that freaked me out the most, sitting in a rocking chair as if it had been waiting for me. With a shaking hand, I reached out and touched the doll. As soon as I did, I felt a sudden chill in the air, and I knew something wasn't right. I hurried out of the attic and decided not to tell the kids what had happened. I didn't want to scare them. The next day, I finally plucked up the courage to ask Mrs. Smith about the dolls. She told me they had been in the family for generations, and they'd always been a bit of a mystery. She especially remarked on the one I'd seen in the rocking chair, mentioning that it was rumored to have belonged to a long-lost relative who had a dark past. The feeling of being watched and heard haunted my days at the house. At night, it seemed like the doll was coming to life when everyone was asleep. I began to fear for my safety and the safety of the children. In desperation, I turned to the internet for help, searching for any clues about the origins of the doll. I came across an old article about that relative I mentioned earlier. Turns out, she was rumored to have been involved in witchcraft, eventually losing her mind and causing a terrible family tragedy. Shocked, I realized that the doll must have been cursed or inhabited by the spirit of this evil ancestor. It was the only explanation for the strange occurrences I'd experienced. That night, I confronted Mrs. Smith about the doll, telling her everything I'd found. To my surprise, she believed me. She told me that her family had been keeping the doll in the attic out of fear for what it was capable of. They hid it away, never wanting to deal with the darkness it brought. From then on, we decided it was best to avoid the attic and the doll altogether. But I'll never forget the fear I felt, or the terrifying presence that haunted that old house. Sarah no longer works for the Smiths, and the family continues to live with the haunted doll locked away in the attic. As for me, I now double-check any potential babysitting job and ask if there are any dolls involved. And I never, ever go into creepy attics. I'm gonna tell you about the scariest thing that happened to me when I started doing babysitting jobs. My name's Leah, and at that time, I needed to make some extra cash. So, I downloaded this app on my phone that was meant for finding babysitting gigs. It seemed like a cool idea, but I had no clue what I'd got myself into. At first, everything was great. I found a few jobs around my neighborhood, and everything went well. The kids were nice, and it was easy money. I never thought something bad could happen. But after a few weeks, things changed in the blink of an eye. One day, the app matched me up with a new client who lived on the other side of town. The client's profile was pretty basic, but they were offering decent pay, so I figured, why not? When I arrived at the house, I couldn't shake this uneasy feeling. It was an average-looking house, but something about it just felt off. I tried to calm myself down as I met the kid's father. He seemed friendly enough, but was a bit reserved. He introduced me to his son, Danny, and just asked me to make sure he stayed in his room and did his homework. As the night went on, I kept feeling like something wasn't right. Danny seemed to be a nice kid, but I could tell that he was scared. When I asked him if everything was okay, he just shrugged and said that he wasn't allowed to talk about it. Later, as I was making dinner, I noticed some strange things in the house. It looked like the locks on the doors and windows had been tampered with, and there were stacks of unopened letters on the dining table, most as if they hadn't seen the outside world in a while. My curiosity got the best of me, so when Danny went to the bathroom, I took a quick look at the letters. Most of them were from the bank, and a few looked like they were from a lawyer. I began to worry, but I knew it wasn't my place to snoop. Just before bed, Danny told me that his father wasn't really his father. He said his real dad had left when he was just a baby, and his mom had gone missing a long time ago. My heart broke for the poor kid, but I wasn't sure how to help him. As Danny went to bed, I decided to do a little more digging. I used my phone to look up the father's name, but there was hardly any information about him. Instead, I found a news article about a kidnapped boy who looked eerily similar to Danny, and suddenly the pieces started to come together. Panicking, I hid my phone in my pocket, knowing that I had to get Danny out of there. But how was I supposed to leave with a kidnapped child without his fake father knowing? As I bide my time, I tried to come up with a plan. I pretended to be extra friendly with the father, saying how much I enjoyed babysitting. I thought maybe if I could gain his trust, I could find an opportunity to escape with Danny. Eventually, I managed to convince the father that I needed to take Danny with me for an emergency dentist appointment the following day, promising to bring him straight home afterward. As we left the house, my heart raced, praying that the father wouldn't catch on to my plan. Once we were a safe distance away, I called the police, explaining the situation and telling them where the house was. They told me to stay put and wait for them to arrive. The police came quickly, and I explained everything to them. Thankfully, they believed me and took Danny into their care while they sorted everything out. They went to the house and arrested the father for kidnapping and ransom. A few days later, I learned that Danny was reunited with his real family, and they couldn't thank me enough for saving him. It made me see how important it was to trust my instincts and take action when something didn't feel right. After that experience, I was way more cautious about using the babysitting app, and I made sure to double-check clients before accepting any jobs. As for Danny, I'm just glad I was in the right place at the right time to help him get his life back. But since then, I can't help but feel nervous every time I get a new babysitting request. Who knows what could happen next? Back in high school, me and my friends were trying to make some cash. So one time, around Halloween, we all took a babysitting job together. I remember it like it was yesterday. My name is Chris, by the way. So we showed up to this huge house for a Halloween party. We was in charge of watching the kids. There was 5 of us all together, and I think there were like 7 kids. I figured it'd be easy money, you know. Anyways, as the night began, we fired up some pizza and sat the kids down to watch some Halloween cartoons. It all seemed cool and all, but then this real small kid come up to me and says something weird happened in the bathroom. I brushed it off as one of those creepy things kids say sometimes. I didn't want to check it out, but when my friend Julie went to the bathroom a bit later, she says she saw something too. I was like, this ain't good, but what could it be? I just thought everyone getting jumpy because it's Halloween, so I shook it off. Then, a bit later, the power goes out. Like, bam, no lights. That got everyone riled up. Now all the kids start to cry, and me and my friends. We gotta get to the breaker box and fix it. The breaker box was in the basement, and I kid you not, that place was spooky as hell. But we all went down, like, just to be there for each other. It took us forever, but we finally figured out how to turn the lights back on. But then, hear this, we get back upstairs, and that small kid, he says he saw a guy in a mask like a killer from one of those slasher movies. We all freaked out a bit more. At first, we laughed it off, but we started finding creepy notes around the house. It said something like, "I see you or you can't run." Man, that sent shivers down my spine. Me and my friends, we ain't no cowards. We knew the kids were in danger. So we called the cops, but it takes time, right? With the party still going on, we figured the masked guy was trying to blend in. The kids were wigging out, and so were we. We tried to keep him safe while we searched the party for the guy, but it was so hard. There were people drinking, dancing, and yeah, of course, wearing masks. Finally, the cops show up, but they ain't doing much better than us. Minutes felt like hours, and then all of a sudden there's this big ruckus in the backyard. There was our guy, trying to make a break for it. The cops were chasing after him, and we all watched from the windows. In the end, they caught him. One of the cops took off the guy's mask, and this is where it gets real screwy. It was the dad of one of the kids at the party who had just wanted to ruin the whole thing for us. The kids, they ended up staying at the place, and we got a little extra cash for all the trouble. But man, that was one crazy Halloween. We talk about it all the time, about how we saved the day. But honestly, there's no way I'm ever doing anything like that again. If I hear anything like that again, if I hear anything spooky at my next babysitting gig, I'm bouncing right away. No doubt about it. After that wild Halloween, me and my friends swore we'd never babysit together again. But you know, we're always looking for ways to make some cash. So when the opportunity to house it for someone came up, we was all over it. This time, though, was different. No kids and no parties. It was supposed to be easy money, you know? So, we rolled up to this nice-looking house, just for a weekend. The first day went by without a hitch. We was chilling, playing board games and stuff. But then on the second day, something didn't feel right. I remember hearing this noise, like someone was walking around in the attic. I'll be honest, I was getting a little edgy because of the memories from that Halloween. But I thought, nah, it's cool. It's just an old house, and they make noises sometimes. After a while, I noticed that Julie seemed a bit off. She kept looking out the window like she was expecting to see something. When I asked her about it, she admitted that she got a weird text message. She didn't want to tell me what it said, but she was clearly shaken up by it. Things got worse when the sun went down. We were all huddled in the living room, being a bit paranoid, when we heard the doorbell ring. None of us wanted to check it out, but after arguing for a bit, we decided we had to. We opened the door, and there was this creepy-looking doll just sitting there. No note, no nothing. That freaked us all out, but we didn't want to call the cops over a doll. They'd think we were nuts. The rest of the night, we kept finding more weird stuff in the house, like footprints in the hallway and strange noises coming from the walls. We finally decided to search the house, top to bottom, to see if anyone was messing with us. In the attic, there was nothing. The bedrooms were clear too, but then we came to the basement. It was mad creepy. There were these old paintings on the walls, and it looked like someone had been living there. We was all freaked out. We knew there had to be someone hiding in the house, but we couldn't find them. We called the cops, and they searched too, but still nothing. In the end, We decided to just tough it out till morning and hope nothing else happened. But in the middle of the night, I heard a loud crash. Me and my friends jumped out of bed, and there, standing in the kitchen, was the guy from our previous babysitting gig, the masked intruder. He didn't seem dangerous this time. He was just sobbing on the floor, broken-hearted. Turns out, after the Halloween incident, his wife left him, and he lost custody of his kids. He wanted to make things right, but didn't know how, so he thought if he could scare us again, he'd get his family back. We didn't want to get the guy in more trouble, so instead of calling the cops, we tried to help him out. We talked to him for a while, and then we promised him we'd talk to his wife and kids about it. In the end, they all ended up reconciling. I like to think we had something to do with that. Man, after that, I promised myself I'd never get into another crazy situation like that. But you know what? Life has a way of throwing you some curveballs, so who knows what stories I'll have to tell next. All I know is me and my friends will always have each other's backs, no matter what spooky stuff comes our way. Thank you for sticking around and listening to our spine-chilling story. We're continuously trying to improve, so your feedback means a lot to us. Help us tailor our content to your liking by hitting the like and subscribe button. But don't stop there. Head to the comments and share your thoughts about what you enjoyed and what didn't quite hit the mark. Let us know what kind of terrifying tale you'd like to hear next. You can even upvote a comment that suggests an idea you're into. Remember, we create these eerie stories based on your requests, so your input is invaluable.